Welcome to National Hedgerow Week. Here is today's hedge, or hedgerow. This is an interesting hedgerow. It has had several rows of hedging plants planted. Bear in mind that this hedge wasn't here at all in 2011, and it actually got planted between 2013 and 2017. Here we have the lovely May tree, or May blossom tree, or hawthorn, or Crataegus monogyna is its proper name. And it has these wonderful little creamy white flowers in May, surprisingly enough, which is now, of course. And it has these lovely little palmate leaves, which are quite soft at the moment. They will get a little bit harder as the season goes on and they mature. And slightly darker green as well. So these are relatively young leaves. They've just been out about a month or so. And then these little white flowers will turn into little red berries called haws, H-A-W-S, which actually hang on the tree in most years right through winter, so they're really good food for our returning migrating birds in early spring. Last year, of course, in 2022, we had a really hot summer. Even up here in the northeast of England, we had a really hot summer. Perhaps not as hot as elsewhere, but still hot for us. And all of the berries on all of the trees and bushes ripened completely and fell off. So there really weren't very many berries left for our migrating birds to eat this spring. So I hope they've managed to find enough to eat. Anyway, the hawthorn, lovely tree, and it is of course edible. You can eat the leaves and the flowers just as a wayside snack, or you can add them into salads. As with all foraged food, you just eat a little bit at a time now and then, not a huge pile. And the berries, of course, are also edible, but not the pip in the middle. The pip in the middle must be spat out or removed, but you can eat the flesh around the outside, which has a texture a little bit like avocado, but much smaller. And of course the big hard stone in the middle is also similar to an avocado. It's got a slightly citrusy taste, and it's fairly dry, the flesh, but it's quite nice as a refreshing wayside nibble. And you can make some lovely jam or jelly from the haws, or nice tea from the berries too. And it's calming. It has a calming effect on your heart rate and your blood pressure. A little similar to taking beta blocker medications. So if you are taking beta blocker medications, perhaps don't have the hawthorn tea until you've checked with your doctor. But it's quite good if you've got something that's making you anxious coming up, like an interview or an exam. You might want to just have a cup of hawthorn tea before you go to steady your heart rate and make you feel a bit calmer. So anyway, so the wonderful hawthorn. Of course, the other thing, it's called a hawthorn because it has thorns, and it has quite big thorns. The little branches, the little leaf branches that come off, the leaves are on a little tiny stalk at the start, and then those little tiny stalks grow into these great big stalks with a very sharp pointy end. Quite lethal. And very painful if you get one of those stuck through your hand. And it's not a cuddly tree, so don't give your hawthorn a hug. It will reward you by stabbing you. So that's the hawthorn. There's quite a lot of hawthorns in this hedge. Not all of them in flower yet, because just like people, each tree in each species is unique and different from all the rest. So can't just assume one and the next one will be the same and do the same thing. Next we have one of our native roses, and this is I'm just trying to remember which one this is. This could be a dog rose or a sweetbriar rose, I'm not sure. Once it comes into flower, I'll tell you. Anyway, so this is one of our native roses. These come out a little bit later than the Japanese roses into leaf, but this one's got its leaves coming out now, which is good, and that will have lovely little pale pinky flowers, lovely open roses, and this will have small elongated rose hips once the flowers have gone over. That's the fruit of the rose. Roses are also edible. Apples, of course, are in the rose family. Apples and pears in the rose family, so roses are edible. We can eat the petals of the roses. They taste really kind of rosy, which is rather nice. And we can eat the rose hips, the flesh of the rose hips. The birds love the seeds out of the rose hips. So if you can organise your birds to peck out all the seeds from the rose hips on the bush, then you just get left with the flesh. That would be good, wouldn't it, if we could work together so closely. Anyway, but we take the seeds out to use the flesh to make lovely things like rosehip soup, or rosehip ice cream. That's quite nice too, or rosehip tea. The seeds actually from the rose hips are medicinal. They have been studied scientifically, and they have been proven to be beneficial for arthritis sufferers. So actually you can dry the whole rose hip and grind it up if you have a suitable small grinding machine to do that. And you can just use the powder as a supplement, dietary supplement, which might help with arthritis. So anyway, the rose, lovely, beautiful, great for bees and other pollinators. Lovely rose flowers. Some of them get quite big. I'm just going to move along the hedge and you'll see a rose which is much taller than this hedge. They just go up and up and up. So here's a rose, and it has gone very tall. Yep, all the way up there. That's easily 2 and a bit times as tall as me. Anyway, 2.5 times my height. It's not exactly a climbing rose, but they do sprawl everywhere. There's quite a few roses in the hedge here. Quite a few in amongst the hawthorns. So that's the roses. Just going to go along until we find some of the bushes that haven't got quite so many leaves on yet. Some of them haven't got any leaves on yet. And these are the blackthorns, another thorny bush, very common in hedgerows. And these have the little tiny oval leaves, and some of them quite big oval leaves. These are small yet because they're just coming out. The blackthorns have their blossoms first, and then the leaves come out after. Actually, I don't know if this is a blackthorn. This I think might be a cherry plum. We've got a mixture in the hedges of blackthorns and cherry plums. We ordered blackthorns many years ago, but some of them are actually cherry plums. They're very similar bushes, but for the cherry plums, the blossoms come out on the same time as the leaves do. And actually, I think this is a cherry plum because the blossoms had stalks. You can see here this blossom had a stalk, whereas the blackthorns don't have such a long stalk, and the flowers are very slightly different. Still a thorny bush. Still got these long thorny branches, but they're not as thorny as the blackthorn, which I think it's the same bush. Not quite as thorny as the blackthorn, but they still have these big spiky thorns on. You can see, there we are, big spiky thorns on the branches oftentimes, and little ones too. They're very similar, but the bark tends to be less black. So I think this is definitely going to be a cherry plum or some sort of hybrid, because they are very similar plants, and I have to say the nursery that supplied these often didn't know the difference either. A rose in there that's the only branches with leaves on are out the other side of the hedge, which we'll go around in a minute. But this rose, there's some down here. This rose doesn't have a lot of leaves at the bottom. It's got some rust. I suppose if I was a rose gardener, I'd be really concerned about the rust. I'll be treating this poor tree with all manner of things, but out here in the wild of the hedgerow, I tend to just ignore it because it turns up here and there and then disappears again. And really, we're just letting nature decide out here. So the rust is here, but it doesn't tend to do as much damage as it would in your rose garden, I suppose. Anyway, moving along, see if we can actually find a blackthorn to see the difference. Yeah. So here we have an actual blackthorn rather than pretending to be blackthorn. This blackthorn, as you see, has big thorny, much more firm, big thorny spikes. Not a cuddly tree at all, and its little flowers, which have gone brown now, don't really have much of a stalk, and the bark is darker, and it hasn't really got its leaves on yet, but they're coming out. Here's the little leaves coming out now. So that's a blackthorn. It has blossoms on bare stems, and then the leaves come out after the blossoms. So it's a bare stemmed blackthorn. Quite a lot of these. We'll see more of these in the other hedges through the week. And so we've got along here all sorts of other things. We've got a little willow tree, and we can see the little willow catkins here. A nice little willow. Now, I didn't plant that, so that's planted itself. Willows do this quite a lot here. We have quite a few volunteer willows. We've got these lovely catkins, which the bees love. The bees are busy doing something else. They're all on the dandelions this afternoon. So that's a little willow tree. So it hasn't got the leaves opened fully yet, just little tiny leaf buds coming on there. There are lots of different kinds of willow trees, some with narrow leaves, some with wide leaves, and some with in-betweeny leaves. So we'll see what this one is once the leaves open. I think probably in-betweeny would be my guess. And then right amongst it, we've got these lovely catkins hanging on the silver birch tree. This lovely silver bark at the back there. And it's going up and up and up and up. Up and up and up. There we go. And it's got its little baby leaves forming. Just coming out now. Gorgeous, aren't they? So we can use the birch leaves and the birch bark. If you want to, you can eat the catkins as well, full of nutrients. Not great texture for eating, so you would make them into something. Maybe sprinkle them on a sauce or a soup or a stew or a salad with other seasonings. And you can make the leaves into tea, or you can stick them in when they're this nice and young and soft. It's better. You can make them put them in your salad as well. But a nice birch leaf tea would be good. The birch bark is also useful, and we can use that to make analgesia, because the birch, like the willow, has aspirin precursors in its composition, and so it can be an analgesic. In early spring, late winter, we can actually, if we wanted to assault our tree, which I don't want to for mine, we could use the birch sap as a drink. We can tap it either by making a hole in the trunk, which I think is evil, but there you go. You have to be very careful to plug the hole properly afterwards so the tree doesn't bleed to death. Or you can just take the end off a little branch and tie a little plastic bag to it, and the sap will drip into your plastic bag or your jar, whatever you've hung on the end. But you must do it before the sap really rises strongly in the springtime, once spring gets going, otherwise you'll bleed your tree. And the tree needs its sap more than I do, so I'm going to leave my trees, all my lovely birch trees, and there are many. There are many birch trees, you can see them going along. And the other way as well, lots and lots of birch trees. Lots and lots of birch trees all along. You'll see many more birch trees as the week goes on. So I'll leave my birch trees to keep their own sap. That's good. Now, back to blackthorns for a moment. If you've got a blackthorn, you'll have many blackthorns, because they do this. They come up outside of the hedge from the roots, they sucker from the roots, and this is lots of little blackthorns. We're forever fighting them back out of the fields because they go quite a long distance away from the hedge and pop up everywhere. So you've got one blackthorn, you'll have lots of blackthorn. The other thing in the hedge there's plenty of is bramble. Lots of bramble. Bramble, it comes climbing out of the hedges as well across the fields, and we're not short of some blackberries when it gets to late summer. So these are the little brambles with the 3 leaves bunched together there. We can eat the bramble leaves, we can make tea with the bramble leaves, and before the leaves actually open we can eat the bramble buds. Our deer love the bramble buds, and I don't blame them because they taste of coconut. So if you ever find a bramble bud not quite opened into the leaves, you can eat the bramble bud and you'll taste coconut. And of course we can eat the bramble fruits, the blackberries, very popular fruits. So we've got plenty of bramble along here. As you can see, it's everywhere. It's quite small, apparently small at the moment, but there's an awful lot of it actually up into the hedge as well, which becomes more obvious as all the leaves open through the season. Lots and lots of bramble. So we're along here, and back to the other end of this bit of hedge where I started. See all the different trees. This little hawthorn hasn't opened its blossoms yet, but there's just little tiny blossoms about to open. And we see more and more of these little blackthorns in the grass escaping out of the hedge. Lots of them are everywhere. Blackthorns. And just curiosity at the moment, we've got some little fungi down here. Egg yolk fungi. They start out, my dogs actually just run them over, so they're not looking at their best. They start off looking a bit like egg yolks and a bit slimy and slippery, and then they go shiny and smooth and a bit more grey. Eventually they'll open and sort of disappear. So tomorrow, yesterday they all looked a bit like egg yolks down here, and now they're shiny, and tomorrow presumably they'll look a bit greyer. Let's go back and have a look. So we've got through a little pathway through the hedge. There's not many ways through our hedges, and as I said at the beginning, this hedge has been planted many times, so it's had one iteration. And then it had some extra plants put in, and then it had some extra plants put in, so it's actually got 3 layers, this hedge. Plenty of bramble going through, so it makes it quite a wide hedge, so it goes from over there to over here, which is a long way. There we go, so it's a good, I don't know, 10 or 12 feet deep probably, perhaps more. Anyway, so we've got here these little, again, spiky plants. I've got spiky plants in my hedges. Spiky plants, very spiky these. And this is a wild pear with its little rounded or slightly elongated leaves with a wee point on the end. These are quite young trees, but they went in 2017. They haven't had any fruit or flowers yet, so I'm still waiting for that to happen. If they were going to flower this year, they would have done so, because pears are early to flower. I imagine wild pears would be the same. So we're not having flowers or fruits this year again. We'll just have to keep waiting. Anyway, there's quite a lot of these in the hedge. There's more little spiky things in the middle, which I think are also these wild pears. They slightly vary from one to the next again, with slightly different size of leaves and shape of leaves. That's again because all the trees are individual. And then we have, I would say one of my favourites, but all my favourites, the rowan tree. It's old branch still because it's windy. So it's the rowan tree with its about 17 leaves usually, leaflets on the leaf branch. And these are the flowers just about to open. And all of this at the end here came out of one giant bud. I think they're amazing. One giant bud opened to reveal all of that. And then you get the smaller buds down the stem with just the leaves in. So the end buds of a rowan branch are just massive. So this is a beautiful tree. Again, in the rose family. So you can have, you can eat the little, like tiny little mini apples, I suppose. You can eat the little rowan berries not straight off the tree, but once they're cooked or pickled. Or fermented, because the chemical nature of them needs to change before they're safe to eat. You can eat one or two and get away with it, but you might feel a bit nauseous if you don't want to eat a lot of them. Don't really want to take them at all off the tree. Take them home and do something to them so it makes them safe and delicious to eat, which they are. Of course the birds love them, the berries, so you have to share the berries with the birds. So this is the other side of this hedge, and it's got all sorts of things. If we go along, it's quite a long hedge. We'll find other trees as well. Another bigger rowan there with the sun behind them. More birches, more wild pears, more rowans, more hawthorns, more roses. And then we've got a tree here which is not in leaf yet, but it's got its buds, quite big buds. It's not great there. It's got quite big buds on. They're about to burst open. Of course, they're in the middle of the hedge here. See these lovely pinky buds. So I'll get that into focus better. Yeah, got nice big pinky green buds, and just about to open. So that's not there yet. But we've got a friend of its up here, who has opened its big buds already. And get further up, I'll find it. Birds singing, chatting. And this one's opened its buds. And this one is a white thing. It's got these beautiful pale apple green leaves. Time of year. Oh, gorgeous. Someone's been eating that one, look. Someone's had a bit of a nibble out of that. That's lovely. But they're beautiful. Lovely. Different colour leaves. Every tree, every bush has a different dimension to the hedge. So that's a white beam. These are just young trees. They haven't got any flowers or fruits so far. Here we've got another willow. This has planted itself here, and it's just in process of opening its little catkins. So it's a later tree than some of the others, which are well and truly out. This one's just about open. There. Another self-planted willow. Shadier side of the hedge, that could be why it's a bit later. This hedge carries on right up to the corner here. We've got some late blackthorn flowers as well in here. Look, no leaves on this blackthorn yet. It's lost in the hedge, so you can't tell that really. But that's its flowers without leaves. Blackthorn in there. And again, probably because it's a bit shadier in this corner, it's a bit later than some of the others. Just brought back along here. So the other things we've got in here, we've got small leaf limes, we've got hornbeam, and we've got snowy aspalus. Oh, I almost forgot. And just snuggled in amongst them, which is not a native tree at all, but it's in here because there didn't seem to be anywhere else sheltered for it to grow on the farm, is an Indian bean tree, which hasn't opened its little buds yet, but it will. Very nice big leaves in here, lovely colour. But we tried it in various other places, and it's ended up here because it's kind of in the middle of a snuggly hedge, to keep it warm and slightly out of the wind, which is its preference. It's a windy moor. We don't have all that many sheltered corners. It's wonderful how the trees all grow at funny angles. This one is leaning over, but it's happy. the wind. Come on, ones. So back to the path and carry on down here. Lots and lots of these little wild pears and rowans at this side of the hedge, and of course we've got the birches and the hawthorns and the blackthorns and the roses at the other side of the hedge. We've got some rowans in the middle. Also got in here, again it's a survivor of being assaulted. This is a goji berry, which was not here to start with, it was somewhere else. Despite being pointed out as something to avoid running over, it was sadly run over and almost completely destroyed, in fact, by someone with a digger. But amazingly, we pulled it out of the mud, what was left of it, and planted it here. And it's kind of surviving, which is a shame because it's only just surviving, because it had been about 12 feet tall and really flourishing before it was run over. But anyway, just shows the determination to survive. It's still here, we'll see how it gets on. Yep, so carrying on here. Mostly just repeats of this combination of plants in the hedge here. A couple more different ones though, if we can get to them without falling over the dogs. The hedge gets a bit narrower here, it's not quite so thick, the layers are planted closer together. And pull over my dog again. So we've got this one with these lovely sort of rusty coloured leaves, slightly pink, slightly orange leaves. They're gorgeous, sort of bronzy leaves. And this is a snowy mispilus. It's beautiful. And there's flowers. Normally, haven't seen any flowers. Must have missed them. I think they come first again. Snowy mispilus, that's lovely. And somewhere, I've gone past it, I've gone past it, and there's another one here, a different one, which is a white poplar. So this is just coming into leaf as well, and this has little palmate leaves with a white, silvery white back, beautiful. This is only just coming, it's got quite white bark as well, so it's called the white poplar. Sadly its top fell off last year, but anyway it's still quite big. It's still fine. But yeah, the big tall ones in the hedge can suffer from the wind sometimes when it gets a bit stormy. Anyway, so that's this hedge. Lovely back ends off the birch up there. Curtain. Very pretty trees. There's another frost coming, some of the bronze snowy mispilus. And that's about the size of it, but this hedge is a very long hedge. Very beautiful hedge, multi-layered. Complete thicket down the bottom. That's great for the wildlife to hide in here. It's usually full of all sorts. Anyway, so yeah, so that's hedge number 1. So join me again tomorrow for hedge number 2.